Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Michelle Cerna. I am the Director of ERP Systems for True North Dynamics. We have probably chatted at some point in time, or we'll chat in the future if we haven't gotten to meet yet. Today, I'm going to be presenting to you different information that we have received recently from Microsoft about the life cycle of Dynamics GP and different options you have to move on to a new platform system. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please put them into the Q&A part of Teams that will be on the top right-hand corner. You are also welcome to email your client success manager at any point in time to ask some questions. I put the email in the chat, but we also have a slide at the end of this session with that email as well. We will be sending out the recording of this webinar as well as the deck that I'm presenting today. So let's get started. We'll hop right into it. Last week, we received an announcement from Microsoft that they are officially announcing the end of life for Dynamics GP, and that will be in September of 2029. This is something that we all kind of been expecting for quite a while. I think a few years we've been expecting for this to come, but we never really had a specific date that it was going to happen. We now officially have that date. So as of September of 2029, that is considered the end of the life cycle for Dynamics GP. They did announce that they will be doing extended support for a limited amount of time up to 2031, but that does not include your normal everyday support or updates happening to the system. That is more like if you have a security update that's required, they may update GP to help with the security, but it's not guaranteed. So we've heard from various people at Microsoft to not really look at the 2031 date, to more think of 2029 as the end of that life cycle for GP. So what does that mean in the right now? Well, upcoming soon, April of 2025, you would not be able to purchase additional licenses for new GP customers. And what that means is if you have not maintained your annual enhancement for GP, but you need to get new licenses, so you go to pay the enhancement and get caught up, after April of 2025, you won't be able to do that for perpetual licenses. If you are subscription based, that is April of 2026. But as of now, we aren't expecting to see any major updates or new features being released. Any of the updates that are going to be happening are going to be more around your year-end updates for things like payroll or taxes. We've also seen a really heavy reduction in the staff that Microsoft has for Dynamics GP. Most of that GP staff has been let go within the last year or so. What does end of life actually mean? So for us, end of life is really looking at no new features or updates, like we mentioned. You are going to have security risks. This is all about just educating you guys on kind of what this means. I don't mean to scare anyone. You don't need to be worried it's turning off tomorrow. But really, once that 2029 date hits, we can expect that there might be security risks, compatibility issues. Imagine if there was a new update for Microsoft and you go to turn on GP and it's not compatible with that release that just came out. Microsoft won't support trying to fix GP to be able to be compatible with either your other products, third parties, Microsoft products or platforms, or even security requirements. There's also a likelihood that over the next couple of years, we're going to see the enhancement fees be increased quite drastically as well, and limited support. We already have a lower staff at Microsoft, but also third parties might start reducing their staff or becoming less likely to support. So what do we do next? What is our plan? We want to make sure that you guys are evaluating your current system. Think about what requirements you have for your ERP system, what kind of implementation is best for you. But really, most importantly, start developing the plan around your time frame of when you'd like to move. That brings us to our next question. When should you do it? This is really going to be based off of the best time frame for you. End of life is not for 5 more years. However, we know that resources will be dwindling over that time frame. So we'll want to think about when is the best time for you to be able to start moving. As time goes by, more and more people will be leaving GP and coming over to Microsoft's other platform, Business Central, or other related competitive programs as well. So you'll want to look at what's the best time frame for you internally, and then also how closely that's getting to that end date for GP. So what we want to talk about today is helping you figure out that next plan, whether that is with Microsoft's other product, Dynamics GP, or not, at least letting you know what we have available to help you get on to that next step. So how do we choose to get on to Business Central? From GP specifically, we have two main options, either a migration or an implementation. Now, the migration is going to be a fixed fee engagement, which means not only a fixed scope, but also a fixed time frame. We've created three different fixed fee engagement tiers that you can choose from that fits your business the best. We are utilizing a Microsoft tool that was generated. So we are completing tasks that this tool allows us to, moving data that the tool allows us to from GP to Business Central. There's very specific requirements and limitations because it's using a tool rather than actually mapping out what pieces individually get imported in. Your implementation is going to be a time and materials engagement, and it's scoped to your specific environment and requirements. So you can look at these two options really high level. Your migration is really fixed. You fit into different categories or you don't. Your implementation is built specifically for you and your needs. We're going to explore those further. So let's start with the migration. I put together an easy visual to help you kind of understand the life cycle of a migration process. We have two different processes, the sales process and then the actual implementation or migration that's happening. So the sales process is nice and simple with your migration. We start off with a GP to BC migration scoping. We run an assessment tool that we work with to help assess your GP environment. That will tell us if there's any records that will not move over successfully in your migration. Also, if there's modules that you utilize in GP that don't come over in the migration. What that lets us do is review anything that needs to be changed in GP before we try to run that migration tool in your project. You will know before you get started everything that will or won't go well and how we can mitigate those risks before you even get started on your project. After we finish that scoping, we review your options with you. We go through all of the things that are included or excluded in your migration, and you are given the tools to help you make a decision about if this is the right fit for you. Once you decide what options you want to move forward with, because we'll give you not only the different options for those three different levels, but also if you want extra training, if you'd like any custom reports, we really still try to make this a personal experience for you. Once you've decided on what the best fit is, then we will send over a quote, you review your quote, you sign that, and we pick a day for you to begin that migration. Once you have started that migration, we start the process of buying your licenses. So you will switch over to Business Central licenses and you'll no longer need your GP licenses. We will get what we call granular delegated admin privileges. This is what helps us get access to your environment. We briefly need global administration access to be able to move your information from GP over to Business Central, and then we give back that access. We are creating your company environments. So you will have a tenant. It is within your Azure AD or Entra ID tenant, and we set up Business Central there. Very easy to log into. It uses all the same logins that you currently use, so it's not a separate login like GP is. It is the same one that you use to get to Word, Excel, Outlook. It's all integrated. After that, we meet to talk about what you want migrated. So for example, if we're bringing over your vendors, do you want all of your vendors or do you only want the active vendors? Do you want all of your items or only your active items? So we'll go through and talk to you about what it is that you'd like to actually come over in the migration. After we've migrated, we validate all of your data. We go through testing with you, we train you, and then we do a final migration, moving everything from production as of that moment to production in Business Central. Then we have post go live support just to make sure you guys are comfortable and doing all right in your new system. The length of a migration project is 6 weeks, so it's a quick turnaround. Sometimes we will extend that project length if you are also implementing things like payroll, but we'll determine that with you during that scoping session, so you'll know exactly how long that project will be before you even sign off. So what moves in a migration? I said that it's pretty specific and limited. That is because the tool only brings over specific information. So I put a high level here. Again, we'll send out this deck, and there's a couple of links here at the bottom that are pretty useful while you're exploring this journey. Your migration does require GP 2015 R2 or newer and has to use SQL Server 2016 or later. If you are not sure what your versions are, we can figure that out during your migration scoping assessment. So you don't have to worry about finding that out if you're not already sure. We'll help you find that out. The module configurations and setups are going to be reviewed and imported in that migration process. The modules that are available, general ledger, your banking, sales and receivables, purchases and payables, and high-level inventory. So things like payroll or fixed assets, those aren't migrated. You'll also be able to bring over your summary GL history. The summary is what's imported to the general ledger. Your detail is what's migrated into something called a GL snapshot, and that's going to be very similar to your smart list. So your summary will be available for all of your financial reporting, just like you're used to, and the detail you'll navigate to a different window if you ever need to dig in. There's a link on here with detailed information that can be found. It's going to Microsoft. As I mentioned, it's a Microsoft tool. I want you to check out the link to get the latest news so you are comfortable with what's going into your migration. There's additional information on how you convert your chart of accounts for Dynamics GP to Business Central. It's really, really helpful just to take a look at that link. And then the detailed videos that I have on the link here, these are wonderful, quick, short videos, I think 2 or 3 minutes at the most, that are showing you what this migration process looks like, what comes over, what that GL snapshot looks like, but also does some really wonderful comparatives of how you do transactions in GP, and it's comparing it to how you would do something similar in Business Central. Super useful link to check out. We're also doing a demo next week, doing a demo of Business Central and comparing it to GP as well. We'll talk about that more further into the webinar. I mentioned that we have 3 migration options that we've set up at different price points for the fixed fee. Explorer, Adventurer, and Trailblazer. They go in the order that they're listed on the screen, and the Explorer is the lowest level. If you love doing things on your own, if you don't want much interaction from True North and you just want some instructions, you have a really great IT team, you want us to send over a video library and do maybe a couple of hours of training, Explorer is wonderful for you. It's a hands-off approach for True North, and it's all managed internally by you, just with some guides and training access. The Adventurer is the middle tier that we have here. This is a True North-led migration. So True North is doing the work for you. We have a project manager that's assigned to your project. We're adjusting your AP check format. So if you're paying out of checks from GP, we will match the formatting from GP for Business Central for you. The module configurations that are included in this version are the general ledger, banking, sales order processing and AR, purchase order processing, and AP. It does not include inventory. You also get video library for training videos and 5 hours of instructor-led trainings and questions. Trailblazer is the top tier. That is all the same as the Adventurer, but we are adding things like EFT exporting, bank statement mapping, inventory, more hours of training, user acceptance testing. So it's more the top tier. If there's things that are in the Trailblazer that you want on the Adventurer, let's say you don't do inventory. So Adventurer sounds great, but you really want some extra training. No problem. Just let us know. We can add on some training to that Adventurer package for you. Okay, all of these are meant to be conversations and just starting points to find the right place for you. I mentioned 2015 R2 or newer, and SQL Server 2016 are the versions that you need to be able to migrate. That is true. That's just a simple requirement of Microsoft's tool. However, we have made different processes where we can make a copy of your database and upgrade it into a virtual machine. And in that virtual machine, we're upgrading your SQL Server and Dynamics GP. Just a small step. You don't have to own SQL Server. You don't have to pay for those licenses. We will manage all of the upgrade process for you. And then once it has upgraded, we will then migrate you just how we would if you were on that version that was required originally. So if you know you're on GP 2010, we can always scope out migrating to the virtual machine and upgrading, and then doing the migration to Business Central. So just because your versions don't fit doesn't mean this isn't an option for you. Let's talk about an implementation. Implementation sales process is mostly the same as it would be for a migration, just a little bit longer. And that's because we are sitting down and scoping out specifically what you want for your journey. We call it the roadmap journey. And what we do is have a detailed questionnaire that we send you. You fill it out, and then we meet and talk about all of the different things that you are requiring for your implementation. This is a personalized approach at getting onto Business Central. So we implement exactly what you ask us to, and we talk about getting your data from GP into Business Central, but it's all manual. We're importing it rather than having a tool move things for us. After we do that journey, we go through the solution. So we write up a solution for you. We give you an estimate of how long we think this will take in terms of hours, weeks to get on, and dollars, so that you have every aspect of what we're expecting for your implementation. We review that document with you and present you with a quote. And if you are ready to move forward, then we sign that quote and get started. If some of the things are not quite in your timeline or in your price point, we go back and we reevaluate. Do you want this to be a phased approach? Maybe in the first phase, we implement some of the things that you'd like to, and in a second phase, we go for the nice to haves. We are all about working out what is the right process for you. After you've completed that sales process, we hop into our project. We're going to start off the same. We have to get our licenses purchased. We have to get access to your environment. We're going to create your companies. And then we go through what we call working sessions. And those are calls where we sit down with your team and we start going through your setups and your configurations. We start talking about what master records, like customers or vendors or chart of accounts, that you need to get in and how they need to be configured specifically. We start bringing in your general ledger history, bringing in those transactions and starting to build out customizations if you require them, or even things like specific reports that you'd like, financial reports you'd like us to build. Finally, we'll move into system testing. We go through and make sure that your system is working as we would expect it to. I always tell everyone we do the testing as consultants. So what we would think would be the way that transactions should post or the way that things should flow based off of all of our conversations that we've had with you up until that point. But the most important part of an entire implementation, whether it's an implementation or a migration, is your user acceptance testing. That is you going into the system and testing it out, making sure that that transaction flow is getting all the way to the general ledger the way that you would expect it to, that your workflows are working the way that you'd expect them to, and that on day one, you're going to have the best first day of a new system that you can. After you've completed that acceptance testing, we do what we call cutover week. And that is where we are taking the last week right before you go live and we're grabbing updated information. So back here, we were working on getting in your customers and your vendors. In cutover week, we're working on getting any new customers or vendors that were just added in between that time period. Usually your implementation projects are going to be a longer time frame because we're importing data rather than moving data. They generally are about 12 weeks or longer. We have some projects that are large, super, super large, very large, that are taking about a year to get implemented. So you are going to have to work with us. We'll come up together with a plan of how long that implementation is right for you. Okay. Keep in mind that year-long implementation has multiple manufacturing companies. So it's not that everyday implementations are going to take you that long. But again, we'll want to work with your schedule because it's going to involve a lot of time from your internal team as well. What do you get with an implementation? As we mentioned, it's specific to you. We're mapping out every aspect of the system to what you want now, not what you had in GP that we're just moving. It's easier for us to scope out any reports or customizations that you want because we're not doing a fixed migration time period. It can be part of that initial scoping. Data cleanup. When you're moving things from GP to BC, you have limitations on what you can clean up. Quite often, you're going to clean up GP so that when you move over to Business Central, it's already clean. In the implementation, you have the luxury of cleaning up any master records or values that you need to as we are populating import files and then getting them into the system. Implementation, you also have any module with Business Central. I mentioned the migration doesn't do things like payroll or fixed assets, manufacturing. With an implementation, we cover all of the different modules that are required for you. And then third parties, if you have an implementation, you have a longer time frame. We've worked out third parties that maybe you want to bring over, or just multiple phases in terms of implementation that you'd like to do. So I'm going to compare and contrast a migration versus an implementation so we have a little bit of a visual to work through. So on the migration side, we have migrating one company. They want to do GL, banking, sales order processing and AR, purchase order processing and AP, and inventory. They'd like to do an export and a EFT export and a bank statement import, and they want the extended training. The best fit for that one in a migration would be a Trailblazer. They're going to get everything that they're looking for with that. Now, if the same company had additional requirements, they want to do one company where True North is importing all of the data. We can also do versions where we train you how to import the data if you'd like to mitigate that cost and you have the team available. We're going to do working sessions where we go through all of the configurations and settings, not migrate them over from GP. They'd like to do GL and banking, SOP and AR, POP and AP, inventory, and also they're adding on fixed assets. They do want to start utilizing sales and use tax, so we'll configure that for them. They want to do EFT, bank statement import, and they also would like to import a payroll file from an external payroll system. They have 4 custom financial reports they'd like us to build, as well as several transactional reports, things like sales orders, invoices, purchase orders. They'd like to get 2 years of detailed GL history and 3 years of summary history, not just a snapshot, but actually in the GL. And they would like us to do system testing with them and then advanced training and user acceptance. So you can see how there's a difference of while we may be getting the same company over, they've added on several things to their implementation just because that's what they require for this use case. If we were looking at this, we would start the migration with a GP to BC migration scoping. That's a fixed fee at $1,750. And that is going to give them all of the information about what needs to be fixed in GP for a successful migration, what the best migration path is, all of the quoting and information that is required for a consultant to complete a successful project for the team. They also are fitting into the Trailblazer category at a fixed fee of $35,000. Now, on the implementation side, they're going to start with what we call the Essentials Roadmap. That is a fixed fee of $3,000. We have 2 different levels of roadmaps. The other roadmap is called the Full Roadmap. The Full Roadmap is an extended version. If you have several companies and let's say several third parties and we want to do manufacturing and service orders and it's just a very large project, we want to make sure we scope everything. That's where we're going to get into the full roadmap range, and we'll do time and materials with you so that we can make sure we cover your requirements and not box you into anything specific. But the Essentials Roadmap works for most of our engagements here. That's a fixed fee of $3,000. And then the implementation, time and materials, again, they're having True North complete all of the work, tons of customizations and reports that are being built throughout the process, and that was around $96,000. Keep in mind, both of these versions have additional options, so if there's more than one company, we can still migrate more than one company. Implementation, we can implement more than one company. So this is just a simplified version to give you some visual. High-level benefits of Dynamics 365 Business Central. I'll keep this really high level. Gina is going to be doing a demo for us next Tuesday. Amber will put a link into the chat for you that is actually going through and comparing and contrasting GP and BC and showing you some of BC's greatest features. But for me, I just wanted to high level give you information about some of the benefits of Business Central. There's no servers. It's all in the cloud. You do not have a server maintenance or have to worry about upgrading your servers. It is part of the Microsoft stack. And what that means is that you are going to be in line with things like Microsoft 365. So the same user to be logging in, same license management. We have access to Power Apps, Power BI, Power Automate, Word, Excel, Outlook. All of these tools that Microsoft has been building are built in with Business Central. It brings you things like Power BI, which is analytical reporting with Business Central data. So building dashboards and KPIs, there's a number that are already built in with Business Central, but the APIs, the data that's there in Business Central is also able to be connected to Power BI for you to create your own reports. Power Automate does things like automating tasks that you had to do manually. One of my favorite is that I was able to create a button on my customer card that said if my customer was 90 days past due, I could automatically block my customer. So little things like that that just make your processes easier. Um, Copilot now is in Business Central. If you haven't heard of Copilot, that's AI that's being brought in to help with things like your bank reconciliation or the creation of sales order processing or just a chat on the side that you can ask how to complete things inside of Business Central. Really cool tool, and it's just getting better and better. You can also access Business Central from anywhere on any device as long as you have an internet connection. So tablets, cell phones, computers, it's all remote and in the cloud. So you don't need to worry about remote desktops or having connections. It's just right out of the box with Business Central. So things to think about as you're exploring this journey. You'll want to know about how much your budget is. As you can see, there is varying levels between the migration and the implementation. The Trailblazer was the top tier on the migration, so you can add on additional things. For the implementation, that was just us getting started, so you have a varied range of what your budget could be. You'll want to figure out what your budget is, and that will help us determine what the best path forward is. And also if you want to do a phased implementation approach. If your budget is a set limit for this year, but next year you have another budget, you can always implement in phases. How much history do you want to bring over? If you want just a couple of years of history, but you want it all detailed inside of your general ledger, then maybe an implementation is better for you. If you are okay with having the summary level in your general ledger, but having the detail in something like a smart list, then a migration may be the right option for you. Do you have customizations or custom reports and forms? Do you have third parties? Those are different things that we'll want to think about and talk through as we're trying to figure out what the right choice is for you. You'll also want to be prepared for answering what pain points you have. What things do you really want to fix? Or what things do you absolutely love that you want to make sure that Business Central is also able to do for you? And the last question that I have, can you afford to not have Dynamics GP working? As we get closer to that cutoff date, you'll want to be asking yourself, how secure do we need it to be if I come to 2029 and I haven't moved off of GP? Am I okay with that or am I worried about that? You'll just want to start planning and having those internal discussions as you think about your next steps. In Business Central, you're going to see names that are still familiar. There's vendors that you might recognize if you have third parties that you're working with. E1, a lot of people use for Smart List Builder. E1 has PopDoc inside of Business Central. You may have even seen your Smart List Builder licenses are starting to change to being called PopDoc. That's because they are making that one product for you. Your licenses, if you have Smart List Builder, will be able to transfer over to Business Central. You won't have to change them. They're now making them transferable for that move to BC. McCorma traditionally does check approvals for Business Central and a few other pieces. Most people haven't needed McCorma inside of Business Central because we can do most of that out of the box, but there still are some different approvals and things that are available with McCorma in Business Central. So if that's a tool that you really enjoy, we have that over in BC as well. Rockton, we don't necessarily need Rockton SmartFill in Business Central. That's all built in now, but Rockton does offer pricing, advanced pricing. If you have really advanced pricing models, Rockton is working on that with Business Central. Binary Stream, if you're a multi-entity customer for Binary Stream with GP, we have the same thing over in Business Central. It's been there for several years. Jet Reports, if you've chosen not to use Management Reporter and use Jet Reports or use it in conjunction with, it is also available in Business Central and one we use quite often. Green Shades, if you're using Green Shades for payroll, it's also available over in Business Central. And there's many, many more, but those are just some of the top third parties that we work with quite often. If you are a Management Reporter user, there is built-in reporting inside of Business Central for financials. We've had quite a few customers that have done this migration already over the last couple of years that just really love Management Reporter. It's what they're used to. There is a product called FYI Soft that looks just like Management Reporter, and they also transition and migrate your reports from Management Reporter into FYI Soft that integrates with Business Central. So you don't have to rebuild reports. It does a migration just like we would migrate for your GP migration. So that is one that's also become quite popular in the move from GP to BC. Any of these products we're also happy to show you. I know that we have several customers who use payroll inside of GP. As the updates become fewer and fewer, payroll is one of the ones that we're definitely worried about. Payroll is not built in out of the box into Business Central. Microsoft has done that purposefully to not maintain that over the years. But we have several third parties that we've worked with quite closely on integration to Business Central. Here's two of them. Integrity Data is one that is in line with Business Central. So to access it, you would log into Business Central. All of the windows are in Business Central. All of the maintenance is in Business Central. Green Shades, you access out of Business Central. So you would go into a web browser and process there. It's still integrated, so it sends your general ledger entries to BC, but whoever is maintaining payroll would access it externally. We are going to be doing webinars for those people who do payroll in GP or just want to switch their payroll provider. We're going to get webinars scheduled here shortly with both Integrity Data and Green Shades so that you can compare and contrast them to see if either of those tools works for you. There's links in here for you to look at their products when I send out the deck as well. So what are our next steps? If you have not seen Business Central yet, don't worry, we have that demo coming next week. Amber already put it into your Q&A section, published there for you to review. If you want to see the migration assessment to see what needs to be done, you'd like that GP to BC migration, just let us know. We are happy to run that for you. And then, of course, if you already have been to these webinars or seen BC or just happy with the decision that you're making, you can always let your client success manager know, and we can hop onto a call and just talk about your next steps with you. Just so you have kind of a look at what's coming, we typically run the migrations. We mentioned they're a 6-week turnaround often. Now, of course, if you're doing payroll, that's usually going to be a little bit longer to keep up with the payroll or other third parties. But traditionally, it's 6 weeks. We do begin a new migration implementation approximately every 3 weeks to keep a cycle going so that you still get all of the attention that you need, all of the training. So we are starting to book out already through 2025 next year. So if you are interested in a migration for next year, but it's not until the end of the year, let us know. We can put you on the calendar and make sure that we reserve a spot for you. And then, of course, let us know what you're planning to do next. I have a form here for you guys with just a few questions. There's not many at all, but it's going to talk about what are you looking to do? How can we support you on this information? Amber will also put the link in the chat for you on this one, and it's available on the deck. But what that will look like is this here, just a couple of questions, your name, your email address, your phone number, just so I can get in contact with you to answer any questions. And what step are you ready for? Are you ready to do a GP to BC migration or an Essentials roadmap? You're not quite sure, so we want to chat through, or we're just going to stay on GP forever, or maybe move to a competitor. Just let us know so that we can make sure that we're helping you. You'll also have a question about if you want to attend the payroll webinars, just based off of some of the answers you give us here. So please let us know how we can help and support you. Do we have any questions, Amber or John?
Yes, Michelle, we have two. The first one, I'm pretty confident on my answer. So will payroll be supported in GP through 2029? And to my knowledge, the answer is yes, including year-end updates for payroll. Post 29 is a question mark at this point.
Yes, yeah, I think on one of the videos that we had seen with the announcement from Mike Morton at Microsoft, they said that it would be supported through 2029 and no longer after September of 2029.
Thank you for clarifying that. And the second question, regarding Business Central for nonprofits, will we have the capability there to work with multiple projects or companies? The answer, I believe, is yes as well.
Yeah.
And a second part of that question is, will it work with consolidated budgets? And that might be a question we want to pick up offline because the budgeting process for multiple companies might get a little tricky.
Yeah, yeah, you're exactly right, John. So, absolutely, we can manage multiple projects and companies inside of Business Central. That will depend based off of how you want to set up your companies. If they're all individual databases, or if you want to bring them into one and have more of a multiple entity environment. But either option is available. And then budgets, yeah, budgets will just depend. We can always bring them together to display budgetary information inside of Jet Reports if you've created the budgets separately in those company databases, or there are several third parties that also do advanced budgeting if you need. But wonderful conversation for us to sit down and talk through together.
Thank you for that. A question just came in. How will fixed assets and depreciation work moving forward? I assume that means work within the BC product.
Yeah, there is fixed assets inside of Business Central. You are able to have a process run depreciation for you. You can even schedule it. We actually just did a pretty in-depth webinar on fixed assets. I'd love to send it to you if you want to see a video going through the different fixed assets process. But yes, we have both fixed assets and automated depreciation processes inside of Business Central for you. If
Excellent.
you
Thank you, Michelle. I
Yeah,
don't
sure.
see any other questions at this point.
Wonderful. I see that was from an anonymous entry. If you want to see that webinar video, please reach out. I put the email on the screen, Client Success, and we'll send that over to you as well. Wonderful. Well, I hope everyone takes the time to fill out that form just to let us know what you're thinking and how we can help you prepare for the next step. And have a wonderful day. If you have any questions at all, we are happy to talk through the expected changes and the impacts with you as well. Should we have? Is there a way to set up custom financial statements in BC, or is a third party like MR needed? It's not required. There is financial reporting inside of Business Central. I would say that a lot of our clients choose to use a third party called Jet Reports or Cosmos Data because it just extends your ability to report. So not only is it only financial reporting, but it's reporting on every table almost inside of Business Central. So think you can do inventory reports or sales reports or payable reports, all kinds of reports because every table is pretty much accessible. So there is financial statements in BC, but there's also third parties that are used quite often. Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for attending. If there's any other questions, please reach out. We're happy to get on the phone and talk to you through any questions or concerns that you may have. And please join us for the webinar next Tuesday on the comparative between Dynamics GP and Business Central as well. Gina, who I'm sure many of you know, will be hosting that webinar and be available for questions. I hope you all have a wonderful day.